Anytime you beg another man to set you free, you'll never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourself.
Okay, so today is the 10th of March. It's March 10th. 2 days ago on the 8th, closing statements were submitted by each team. So COPA's team and Craig Wright both had to submit closing statements to the judge. So we saw that happen a couple days ago. I was hoping that they'd get posted online, but they didn't get posted. So I can't read them just yet. See, maybe they'll get posted sometime later this week. But today's Sunday. In 2 days, we'll see them present their closing arguments in court. So from Tuesday to Friday, they'll be doing their closing arguments. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to give a good executive summary of everything that's been going on so far. I figured just kind of start right from the very beginning. So 2015, we saw Craig Wright get outed as Satoshi Nakamoto by Wired and Gizmodo magazine. But really this legal case, it started when he made claim to the Bitcoin white paper, when he filed the copyright for the Bitcoin white paper. Because essentially after Craig obtained the copyright for the Bitcoin white paper, he demanded that BTC Core take down the white paper from their website, saying that they were fraudulently misrepresenting their version of Bitcoin as the original Bitcoin when it no longer represents anything that's represented in the white paper. So that kind of started the entire legal proceedings that we see now, where Craig Wright is being sued by COPA and BTC Core devs, essentially because they don't want him to assert any sort of ownership claim over Bitcoin or the Bitcoin white paper. Now, one of the biggest criticisms Craig has received, if you look online, it's the thing people most commonly say about Craig, is that if he's Satoshi, why wouldn't he just move the coins to show that he is? Now, these people don't seem to be aware of, like, immediately when Craig was outed as Satoshi, people were saying right off the bat that if he moved coins to prove it, that he must have stolen them. So this argument just doesn't pan out. He has to prove his identity has to be established first. I mean, people from COPA have said flat out, if he was to move coins, we'd accuse him of stealing the keys from Dave Kleiman, and that he can't be Satoshi, and he'd still have to prove it. So really, a lot of people, they want that satisfaction of him moving coins for their own verification, because they think that gets them over the hurdle of identifying him as Satoshi, but legally that's not enough. And that's always been Craig's argument, that legally his identity has to be established as Satoshi before he moves coins, and that he would do it after. And I find it very strange. And we had 19 days of trial. A month before the trial, 26.9 Bitcoin were moved to the Genesis block. And in 19 days of trial, absolutely nobody mentioned it. I very strongly suspect that it's something he's going to do potentially in this last week. Right at the very end, maybe he's going to move those 26.9 BTC that was sent to the Genesis block. I mean, we'll have to wait and see, but it's very strange to me that it didn't come up at all throughout the trial, not once. Now, one of the things that makes me suspect that the 26.9 BTC that was sent to the Genesis block is going to be moved by Craig is the statements that he made prior to the trial. I'll put some of those on screen here because a lot of them are really interesting. He talks about pretty much planning for this trial as if it's a game of chess, so that he's going to use certain chess strategies. Yeah, so I mean, throughout the case, there weren't any real chess moves or chess plays that were played by Craig. His team didn't really present anything that was unexpected, and this strategy that he laid out in Twitter posts and in public posts he made prior to the case didn't really pan out. I mean, you really didn't see any sort of bombshell. So really, I think that the 26.9 Bitcoin that was sent to the Genesis block a month before the trial, that's probably his ace up his sleeve, and I think we're going to see him play that this week. Hasn't happened yet. I think you see these coins that were said to be under his control. In the Kleiman case, there are certain addresses that Craig said he had control over that are now moving and selling Bitcoin. So Craig's selling Bitcoin. And I suspect that's part of his evidence for this case, because essentially a lot of the documentation from that case is evidence in this one. And I'd imagine that those addresses are known to the courts, and they see that he's moving these early coins. They see that he's moving those early Bitcoins and selling them. I think that's kind of just timed as a hint. He's hinting at it. I think he's hinting that he's going to move coins. He's going to move those 26.9 BTC by the end of this trial. It's very strange that it didn't come up in the 19 days we've seen of trial so far. It's very odd. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think at the end of the trial, we're going to see him move those 26.9 BTC out of the Genesis block. He's going to be like, guess who could have done that? Only one person, and it was me. I think that's going to be his closing argument. Because, I mean, if you think about that, if you move the coins out of the Genesis block, there's a bunch of people who debated whether or not that's even possible. I think it's kind of stuck there now. I mean, there's people who said those keys have been signed with, so there must be, or those blocks were signed with before, so there must be keys for them. But it's actually a bit of uncertainty there. People just really don't know how that would work. So we'll have to wait and see. Now, on top of the Bitcoins being moved from the Kleinman addresses, the addresses that Craig said he had ownership of in the Kleinman case, in addition to that, we also see the Marty Malmy emails that have come out. These emails are significant because they really do paint the case that Satoshi was a big blocker. And I mean, they reiterate again that that temporary limit that he put in, the 1 megabyte block limit, was supposed to be a temporary security measure. It was only supposed to be there for a short period of time while they addressed the security issue, and then it was supposed to be removed. And he's talking about, at that time, like 15 years ago, like 15 gigabyte blocks, or huge mega-sized blocks for that time period. So really, it sort of indicates Craig is Satoshi. Now, I think the reason why Marty Malmy released these emails is because it sort of indicated that Craig was incorrect about some of the dates that he'd communicated with Marty, or that Satoshi had communicated with Marty Malmy. But I mean, it's 15 years ago. Who's going to remember those dates of communication perfectly? So it's sort of a weak argument. And really, the content of the emails way more indicates that Satoshi was the kind of person that Craig is, talking about big blocks and the need to scale with big blocks. So really, I think releasing those emails was damaging to COPA's argument. Really damaging, because it paints the picture that Satoshi was someone much like Craig. Now, COPA's argument throughout this entire trial was that everything presented by Craig as proof was fake. Or rather, almost all of it. There were certain documents that they didn't actually question. They didn't argue the validity of some documents. And there's a lot of documents that the court didn't present to us in the trial. The way UK courts work, a lot of the information that's not up for debate, it's just held by the judge. He'll just kind of look at it. They won't really argue about it. Really, the only thing that was presented to us in this trial were the things that each side wanted to argue about. Everything else, it's just kind of left given to the judge. So there's a lot of documents that weren't presented in the trial to us that the judge has to act on. But really, everything COPA was relying on was their expert reports from Madden and from Rosenthal. And really, Rosenthal's report, really, it was weak because he wrote in his report that the white paper must have been written in open office and not in LaTeX, but he admitted in the stand that it could be written in LaTeX and that he could be wrong. And Madden totally nuked his own credibility, saying that the lawyers for Bird and Bird wrote much of his report. So if he can't state explicitly which words in that report are his and which ones were written by lawyers, I don't think it's going to hold a lot of weight. And really, I think in Craig's closing arguments, they're going to ask for the entire Madden report to be stricken from the record, that it's not valid, that it's completely compromised. And really it is. I think that's going to happen. So COPA doesn't have a whole lot of a case without the Madden report, especially when the other primary report, Rosenthal's report, also doesn't hold any water because he admitted on the stand that it could have been produced in LaTeX, that the white paper could have actually been produced in LaTeX, so the whole case has fallen apart. So Patrick Madden, he did not perform well on the stand. I actually think he's kind of a fall guy. I honestly think that they hired this guy to do a report because they couldn't find a real expert who's willing to completely destroy their own credibility in order to try to attack Craig. Because really, I think that's what they did here. They got someone who's willing to write a report, put their name on it, put their credibility on it, take a paycheck, and not really care about what happened. That's what I think of Mr. Madden. It's just so obvious. I mean, eventually these trial proceedings will be made public, I believe. I think at one point you'll be able to watch the trial, go back and look at everything that happened. I think there's going to be a huge amount of public interest in this trial after the verdict, especially if Craig wins. So I think they'll want to make this public just because the amount of backlash that is going to happen if they say that Craig is Satoshi, people are going to lose their minds and everyone's going to want to know how this guy proved it in court. So I think they're going to have to probably publicize a lot of the footage from this trial. And it's going to be damning when a lot of people get to see these expert witnesses, especially, I mean, Marty Malmy, he looked guilty on the stand. Madden looked guilty on the stand. Rosenthal didn't seem super guilty, but he had nervousness to him. I mean, a lot of these people, they're going to have a serious problem after this trial if Craig is deemed to be Satoshi. They're all going to have a lot of angry people wondering what the hell they've been up to. Like, the lies that these people have been telling, a lot of people are going to want some serious answers about the lies that these people have been telling. So really, throughout the trial, COPA's entire argument was that Craig is a liar, that all the documents that he produced are forgeries or frauds, that he's a serial forger, and that he's spent much of the last 15 years building a suite or like an archive of forgeries to prove that he's Satoshi, while also doing all the other things that Craig has been doing, like stacking 4,000 patents that are Bitcoin related or blockchain related. And a lot of people discount this. I personally, there's a couple things that I want to patent. I've wanted to for a while. It's quite expensive to apply for a patent. It's about 20 grand. It's like the minimum starting. So I haven't gotten the intellectual property, but I don't think the average person really understands what it takes to amass 4,000 patents. To come up with 4,000 unique patentable ideas is not normal. That's putting it very lightly. The type of person who does this is a supreme genius. These aren't normal people that come up with 4,000 patentable ideas. And something that people just completely discount. Like, Craig can't code, all these ridiculous things that you hear people online saying about Craig Wright. This guy's 4,000 patents. Nobody is getting 4,000 patents as a fraud or as a fake. It just doesn't happen. You know who gets 4,000 patents? That's like Thomas Edison. Those are like supreme genius people. Like, this guy is a genius among geniuses. This guy's a polymath. He's been studying his whole life. I'm someone that I love to read. I read as much as I can. I don't think I'll ever become as educated as this guy is currently. I mean, I would love to. I aim for it, but this guy is... he's on another level than most people. And he's on a level most people can't even relate to. I can't. I can sort of relate and I can appreciate it, but he's on another level. And it's someone like that who'd be the guy who created Bitcoin. Now, there's something that happened on the last day of the trial that may have gone over a lot of people's heads. There's some people that pointed it out on Twitter, but it was the suit that Craig wore. Craig, prior to the trial, made a Twitter post talking about, it was actually a post with a clip from Mortal Kombat where the Joker performs his fatality finishing move. And Craig wore a suit very similar to the Joker's on the last day of the trial. I'll put the clip right here.
The Joker wins. Fatality.
And really, I think that Craig wore that suit, that Joker suit, on the last day of the trial to make a statement that I'm about to finish you. I'm going for the fatality. And again, that hasn't actually happened yet. There's nothing in the trial that was a knockout blow that makes it a clear victory for Craig. But maybe that's just his way of saying that it's coming. So just my last thoughts on the trial, just what happened. I think Craig made a very convincing case that he's Satoshi Nakamoto in the trial. I think he's going to win. I think that he presented a lot of evidence that he's Satoshi. He gave a lot of credible witness testimony. He had a lot of credible witnesses come forward and vouch for him. And I think that the expert reports that his evidence was forged completely fell through. There was nothing to it. And he's going to win this. And it's going to blindside a lot of people. And I think all those people who defamed Craig or slandered him over the years, or slandered BSV, they're going to have a lot of explaining to do. And I think there's going to be an enormous public backlash to this verdict if he's deemed to be Satoshi. They're going to have to publicize the trial because there's going to be so many people. They're going to be just pulling their hair out, wondering how this could have happened. And I just think the public backlash would be so enormous if the courts deem him to be Satoshi that it'll be like the world's on fire for a week. I mean, I think you saw the world kind of go on fire for a week when Trump was elected president in the United States. This will be way more significant than that. That was people just didn't like Orange Man Bad being president. Like, he's a figurehead who doesn't really even decide the direction of the country, if you ask a lot of people. And then there's a guy being deemed Satoshi and people losing their life savings. Nobody lost their life savings because Trump got elected. I mean, unless they had some sort of stupid bet going on it. But the meltdown as a result of this case will be severe or it'll be passive. I hope that it'll be passive, but hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Now, a lot of people want to know what's going to happen if Craig wins. If Craig wins this case, it's going to lead to the Bitcoin database rights case being heard in court. Now, that's really what's important here, because the database rights for Bitcoin would belong to Craig if he is Satoshi. So if he's deemed to be Satoshi, he's going to take away the ability for BTC to call itself BTC or to call it Bitcoin. That's really what's at stake here, is that if Craig is Satoshi, BTC will not be allowed to call itself Bitcoin. There will be court-sanctioned changes that will have to be made, and that really means that the courts are going to force the largest mining pools change certain things, and that they'll force exchanges to change certain things. Any entity that can be acted on by the courts will be. And a lot of people in crypto have this naive understanding, or this naive misunderstanding, that crypto is completely immune to legal proceedings. You're about to find out, because this is going to change everything if Craig wins. Patent law is going to be imposed on the crypto space. And really, I think the main reason I really think Craig is going to win is because the courts are going to give him a win no matter what. He owns all this intellectual property. He owns all these patents. They can give him the win now and declare that he's Satoshi, and it'll make the court's job a hell of a lot easier in the future than having to deal with all these patent cases one by one. And really, I know a lot of people have been criticizing the courts. I mean, in Canada, we experienced it with our Cummer lawsuit, that the courts can be corrupted. A case that should be won might not even be heard in the courts if the courts can be corrupted, and it's happened all the time. But really, with Craig's case, I think the government wants Craig to win. I mean, really, Craig is a really upstanding person, upstanding citizen. He's one of those people who really wants to do what's right and what the law says is right. And to a fault, I would argue. I mean, he stood up against the trucker convoy in Canada, which I was a participant in. And his idea was that we should have all just waited for an election when the government was trampling our basic human rights. It's a point of contention. I can't agree with the man on that, but I also understand that he's trying to sell his product to the governments, so there might be a certain length that he's willing to go to conceal his own true feelings in order to advance Bitcoin as a real currency globally. It's possible, but really, I think the courts want Craig to win, and I think they want the legal changes to come that will come if he wins, because it'll be a regulatory capture moment for crypto, where if Craig becomes recognized in the courts as Satoshi, they'll use the opportunity and the chaos created by that to impose all sorts of regulations on the crypto market. And there's going to be this huge, I don't even know what's going to happen if Craig wins. Like, the mental breakdown we're going to see in society is going to be enormous. And not just the mental breakdown, the people losing their life savings, people who just tucked a little bit away into BTC every few weeks or every month for the last few years because that's what the trusted names in Bitcoin have been telling them is a good strategy. All these people that have been giving people this advice, all these influencers that have been telling people just do this, just blindly put your money into Bitcoin, don't learn about it, just listen to me, don't listen to other people, don't listen to big blockers, we know everything, like this is going to be the next thing, everyone needs to put their money into it, sell your house to buy BTC. These people are going to lose all credibility if Craig is Satoshi. Like, all credibility will be lost by these people. And the economic fallout is going to be enormous if Craig wins. You'll probably see a bunch of exchanges go bust. We're going to see probably banks go bust. There's a lot of interconnectivity between financial markets where traditional financial entities like banks have quite a bit of exposure to crypto just because it's $1 trillion market cap, just BTC. It's a $2 trillion market cap if you're looking at the whole crypto space. So I think this could potentially be a black swan event that ushers in a whole hell of a lot of regulation into the crypto space, and just a financial black swan. Like, you're going to see banks go bust, you're going to see all kinds of financial collapse, you're going to see people losing their homes, losing their life savings. And really, I think the people who are going to get hit hardest are going to be retail investors, because if everyone wants to exit BTC, when they realize that it's a passing off fraud of Bitcoin, that it's not really Bitcoin, you know who's going to exit first? It's going to be all the institutional money. They're going to front run the exit, and they're going to front run the entry into BSV. Because in that scenario, a lot of crypto, it's not just BTC that's at stake here. Once Craig is deemed to be Satoshi, he's going to start going after all of his patent rights throughout the Bitcoin space, throughout the crypto space, rather. So almost every project out there is using his IP. There's a few that'll be immune to that. I think there's some really actually decentralized projects with no head to decapitate. So if you can't cut the head off the snake isn't going to go anywhere. But I think there's a lot of projects that are just going to disappear, that the intellectual property rights that Craig has and the way that they've treated Craig. I mean, come on, if Craig is Satoshi, people need to have a real serious discussion about how we've treated this guy over the last 15 years. I mean, really, the last 9 years since his outing as Satoshi, but we've treated this guy like absolute garbage. And anyone who's defended him has been treated like absolute garbage. Ask anyone around. There's a reason why a lot of people think he's Satoshi and they won't say. It's because they'll get destroyed. Their lives will be ruined. And a lot of people have to start asking why. Because it's because we've been lied to by powerful people with powerful interests who had a lot of money to make in lying to us and deceiving us. And it's going to be a painful pill to swallow for a lot of people to realize just how badly they've been lied to over the last few years. Now, in addition to everyone treating Craig like shit, there's a lot of people flat out defamed this guy. They're going to be open. He's going to be able to sue a lot of people. If he's deemed to be Satoshi, he's going to be able to sue a lot of people for defamation. I think that's going to happen. And I think that's why a lot of people are really against Craig, because they've said really bad things about this man. And if he's able to prove that he is who he says he is, he might be able to take some legal action against them and sue them. But the market reaction to Craig being deemed Satoshi Nakamoto would also be something really interesting. I want to see what actually happens. I'm fairly certain that retail will be really slow to learn what's happening. Really slow. Like, it probably is going to take some average people like a month to wrap their heads around what happened. To actually gather the information and compress it all and actually absorb it all is going to take some people in retail, like the average just person who knows nothing about what's going on in the Bitcoin space, to find out that BTC isn't Bitcoin. It's going to send these people on, like, they're going to go down a rabbit hole, let's just say that. They're going to get tossed down that hole whether they want to go down that rabbit hole or not. And really, the market's reaction to Craig being Satoshi, I'm curious to see what that's going to be. Because I think retail will have a slow reaction. They'll be slow to figure things out. But investment dollars and these big investment banks, the smart money that's in crypto, I think they're just waiting for this to happen. I think they kind of, I mean, you look at the BlackRock documents where they talk about the Craig Wright trial as one of the primary risk factors in establishing a BTC ETF. It could very well be the case that they want to play both sides of the market here, where they want to play the collapse of BTC and then front run everyone into BSV. And I think there's going to be a major economic collapse if Craig is deemed to be Satoshi, just because the fallout of BTC collapsing, which I think will be the result if Craig is deemed to be Satoshi, will cause so much widespread economic chaos that it'll extend far beyond just the crypto space, that banks will be affected, large financial institutions will be affected, and it's so interesting to just speculate about what might happen in the event that Craig is deemed to be Satoshi by the courts. Just because there's so much that could possibly happen. There's so many different variables to consider. But if you just look through these BlackRock documents where they're talking about it, they've got this understanding. They 100% know what could happen here. And they have far more data available to them about how everything is interconnected in the market than I do. And I'm sure that no matter what, these people are going to come out on top. That they've considered all the different variables, and it's all math to these people. It's just a formula where they can calculate where they'll get the most profit out of everything. That's really how investment bankers work. And they might just pour a fuck ton of money into BSV and into gold, which I think are going to be the two things that people, if Craig being deemed Satoshi causes widespread economic chaos, most of the crypto space is going to be seen as toxic. People are going to lose a lot of faith in crypto in general because the scale of this fraud is so massive that people are just not going to want any part of it anymore. And they're going to go to the traditional assets like gold and silver, which if in times of economic chaos will be stable. I mean, it'll keep people from losing their shirt. And you'll see Peter Schiff singing his happy dance, of course, and telling everybody I told you so. But there are certain cryptos that will be seen as safe haven still. So BSV, obviously, because it's going to be the one that's officially recognized as Bitcoin if Craig wins. But I think there's definitely going to be a bunch of good privacy coins that will also be a safe bet for people, because they won't be affected by the patent litigation that's going to come about as a result of this case as well. So the trial is going to start again on Tuesday. We're going to have closing statements. I think COPA will present their closing statement, and then Craig's team will. I think that's how it goes. So I'll be reporting on it again for the next 4 days, from Tuesday to Friday. It's unclear. I don't think we'll necessarily get a verdict on Friday. We might. I'm not sure. But from my understanding, the judge in the UK, he can take as much time as he wants on this sort of case and come up with a verdict on his own timeline. So it might be a few weeks after that that we actually get a verdict. But I suspect that he's going to probably have a verdict fairly quickly. He's had all this time to review everything. He reviewed everything before the trial itself. He's probably just going to go over the closing arguments again, make sure he hasn't missed anything. If he has any lingering questions, find clarification on them maybe. Yeah, we should get a verdict soon. And yeah, I'll have a couple videos prepared in the event that Craig wins, or in the event that he loses, I'll have one prepared. I'll probably only have one in the event that he loses, because I'm not expecting that. But there's a bunch of videos that we'll need to make. There's going to be a lot of discussions that are going to have to happen. Going to have to happen if he's deemed to be Satoshi.